Welcome to Retirement Straight Talk with Paul and William, featuring award-winning financial advisor and former host of the Sunday Money Show, News Talk 1010, Paul Baraka, and his associate advisor, William Baraka. Creating and keeping wealth does not need to be complicated. Paul and William will cut through confusing and contradictory financial advice to give you the real facts to help you invest better and enjoy a worry-free retirement. The views and opinions expressed in this video may not necessarily reflect those of IPC Securities Corporation. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions.
And welcome everyone to episode number 30 of Retirement Straight Talk with Paul. That's me and certified financial planner, William Baraka, who's also joining me as he does every week. And again, well, thanks for joining us, whether you are listening to us through whomever or wherever you get your podcasts, or if you are watching us on YouTube, welcome to the program. And today, Will, again, got a topic that I think is dear to both of our hearts.
Very dear to both of our hearts, Paul. I spend a lot of time on social media. I think you do a little bit too. And I'm constantly, I don't know what the right word is, but outraged and shocked and appalled, quite frankly, at some of the stuff I hear and read on there. There's so much just flat out garbage being spewed out there on social media from people who are called so-called financial influencers, whether it's on TikTok, Instagram, any of the social media networks out there. And quite frankly, I think there should be more regulation around this, because there's people out there who aren't qualified at all to give advice, have no idea what they're talking about. And there's people who are actually listening to them out there, acting on this advice that's being given. And that's putting their hard-earned life savings, retirement capital at risk. So it's something that I think there should be more regulations on what's allowed to be said out there.
Yeah, I don't know, that's a dicey issue on the regulations, but I think we're both talking. What prompted us to talk about this is a recent paper that tracked data on 29,000.
Yeah.
And the terminology they used was finfluencers.
From the Swiss Finance Institute.
Yes, and of these 29,000 finfluencers, they categorize them into three categories: either skilled people who actually knew a little bit about what they're talking about, and that was about 28%, just over a quarter actually knew something that might provide a little bit of value, 28%. Unskilled, and that was 16%, and then the biggest, and they categorized these people as anti-skilled. They were 56%, more than half. Now, the interesting thing is they did some numbers and said, look, if you actually listened to skilled people, they actually probably had a positive, and they used the word alpha, of adding about 2.6% to your portfolio return. If you listen to the 16% who are unskilled, didn't really make any difference. But the biggest factor, if you listen to the majority, the 56% who are anti-skilled, these negatively affected your portfolio performance, and an average of about minus 2.3%. Now, well, if you think there's people that know what they're talking about and people that don't know what they're talking about, you think that most people would start not listening to the people that don't know what they're talking about and listening to the people that do. But that's not what they found.
That's not what this found. I've always expected this to be true, but it was nice to see it academically proven. Where it showed that according to this Swiss Finance paper, unskilled and anti-skilled financial influencers actually have more followers. They're more active on social media. And they have more influence on retail trading than the actual skilled influencers.
And they were generally the loudest and most confident sounding people. And this actually mirrors a lot. I read a book several years ago, a very well-known book from an author named Jim Collins, who does all sorts of research on leadership. And he did a book a number of years ago called Good to Great. He talked about what leaders make a great company. And you know what? He found the exact same thing. He found the business leaders who were the loudest, the most confident, were actually the least successful leaders.
Yeah.
The leaders that were most successful, that made the companies grow great, were the more modest leaders who said things like, well, we think this might be a way to go, but maybe we need some research and this and that. That's not very interesting. But a loud, confident person is interesting, but they were less successful, the exact same thing.
And another, jumping off that, Paul, another maybe more relatable way people can think about that is politics as well. Where
yes.
There's always, the people a lot, and oftentimes the people who get elected, the popular political people, they're active on social media too. They're, like you said, very loud, confident, very, very assertive, think they know what they're talking about. And that projects confidence, and it makes people want to follow them. Even though if you actually maybe dig down deeper into what they're actually saying, you'll find that maybe most of the time doesn't make so much sense. But that doesn't matter, because like you said, they project confidence. It makes people want to follow them.
And we've mentioned too, another great example, of course, is Mad Money, the program on CNBC, headed by Jim Cramer, expert Jim Cramer. And The Spectator followed his recommendations between 2017 and 2021. And by the way, there's not much more of a loud person than Jim Cramer. He has sirens and bells in his program. He's yelling and screaming all over the place. If, according to The Spectator, if you followed his recommendations between 2017 and 2021, that would have resulted in you underperforming the S&P 500 by about 6%. Loud and confident, not very good advice.
Oh, did you hear about Dave Portnoy?
No.
The pandemic.
No.
So he's the owner of Barstool Sports, and during the pandemic, he was already had a big social media presence, but he decided, like a lot of people, a lot of highly speculative stocks had really good returns during those times. And so like a lot of people, he thought, oh, this is easy. I'm going to start investing. So he started a day trader show during the pandemic.
Oh, I bet this turned out well.
He said things like, oh, this is so easy. Why aren't you doing this? He started an ETF as well, which was called the Social Sentiment ETF, which is just comprised of, again, all these speculative stocks. And again, people followed him because, again, he's a very loud, confident guy, very good speaker. But if you followed him,
yes, I think I know where this is going.
Out so well, because a lot of the stocks, actually pretty much all the ones he was investing in and promoting, many of them dropped 50, 60, 70, 80% during the downturn last year. So he was another example of someone very loud, confident, who utilized social media. And again, and I know of people, friends of mine who followed his advice.
Oh boy,
because it was great, easy to listen to, but not the best advice.
Yeah, a good way to determine whether anyone, whether it's in the financial area or other areas, is really, in other words, if what they're saying has any real value, is to ask the question, what makes you think that's true? Then you listen to the answer that you get. And then ask the same question, well, what makes you think that's true? And this goes back to some psychology. If you do that 5 times, ask the same question, what makes you feel and what makes you think that's true? You get down to the core, and that'll tell you, is this bit of information, is there any substance to it, or is it just BS? So that's probably not a bad time to end up today. That was a great program, William. Thank you so much for your input there. And thank all of you listeners for joining us. The next podcast, which is, I think, number 21, we're going to talk about a
31.
subject that 31. We're going to talk about something that we often get asked. People approaching retirement or just in retirement, and they say, well, I got to change my portfolio now. I'm retiring this year. We're going to talk about whether you should or whether you shouldn't do that on the next podcast. We hope we see you there. By the way, please subscribe to us. If you like what you're hearing, subscribe to us and rate us, put 5 stars there. And by all means, pass it on. If you know other people who would enjoy and get value out of what we're talking about, please pass it on to others. And of course, hey, if you're not 100% sure you're going in the right financial direction yourself, and you'd like to have a conversation with us, just send us an email at info@westendwealth.com, info@westendwealth.com. Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, everyone.
This podcast was brought to you by West End Wealth Planning, an award-winning wealth planning practice catering to small and medium-sized business owners and to those looking to create a worry-free retirement for themselves and their families. To learn more, go to westendwealth.com. Don't forget to rate this podcast and subscribe to Retirement Straight Talk with Paul and William by going to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you find your podcasts.